towers was scientifically impossible, and the collapse of building number 7 was controlled demolition.
It's not correct as far as I know, and I think what you're talking about is pretty wild and not right, but I appreciate your comment.
Why is the FBI not seeking Osama bin Laden for these attacks if you assert that Al-Qaeda was the perpetrators of this attack?
I haven't looked lately at the FBI most wanted list, but I can assure you that if we caught Osama bin Laden, he would be prosecuted for the 9/11
And I'm certain
attack.
that in your experience at the White House,
you
would have some information about that, sir.
We have a very long line of people.
But you haven't answered this one.
Which one didn't I answer?
You have said nothing.
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
Other than to say that you disagree.
I disagree.
He's not a man either.
How you doing, Mr. Feith? Wanted to ask you, I've got a two-part question here, so if you'll bear with me. Your firm, International Advisors Incorporated, received an annual payment of upwards of $600,000 to do consulting work for the government of Turkey. Sybil Edmonds, who is the most gagged whistleblower in FBI history, who you have called a conspiracy theorist, but whose credibility is backed up by Senator Grassley and Leahy, characterized a criminal syndicate involving international advisors operating within the governments of Turkey, the United States, Pakistan, and Israel, involved in drug trafficking, arms sales, and leaking of state secrets. Given your unauthorized activities with Monichu Gorbachev, an arms dealer involved in the Iran-Contra, which was rife with national security establishments' involvement in the global drug syndicate, and your insistence in February of 2002 that counter-narcotics measures in Afghanistan be halted, allowing the world's heroin supply to double, and your leaking of state secrets to Israel in 1981 that got you expelled from the National Security Council, should we not be suspect of your credibility? And furthermore, given the fact that you preemptively called for a new Pearl Harbor in your signing of the PUNAC documents, and you actively cajoled and corrupted party officials to focus the military strategy away from Al-Qaeda starting in September 20th, 2001 with the document that you issued to the President saying that we need to move our strategy away from Al-Qaeda and towards Iraq, who was, by the way, Sybil Edmonds testified that Al-Qaeda was seeking funds from the same Turkish criminal syndicate.
You got a lot of people behind you. Could you kind of wrap it up?
Okay, yeah. My question is, why is Sybil Edmonds being threatened with treason? And don't you think that the focus should be turned around to you for your treasonous activities? And I wanted to also ask you if you would be willing to basically submit to enhanced interrogation techniques in this investigation.
Just about everything in your statement that is in the nature of a factual assertion is not factual. So I mean, it would take a very long time to unpack it. But whoever you're, I mean, I hope you're not under the assumption that nothing can get published that's not true. But well, I invite you to take a look at the book, take a look at the sourcing for it, and you can make your own decisions. Ma'am, I think it's time to.
Mr. Feith, I'd like to thank you for coming to speak with us today. I work in the library. I'll be sure that we get your book. So a few people have already made some points that I would make. There certainly is question about 9/11, considering the fact that 3,000 people were killed in that. It seems to me that it would have made more sense to let Hans Blix finish his weapons inspections to find that there were, in fact, no WMD in Iraq. There, of course, are now. I mean, that we would choose to listen to one person called Curveball instead. Looking back now, I realize that the war did not go as the cakewalk and flowers and 3 weeks and no deaths as expected. Considering that over 1 million Iraqi civilians have been killed, considering that our official count is over 4,000 of our soldiers, and recognizing that does not include those that died being flown to the hospitals in Germany, all the others that have died along the way that were not specifically in the battle, the tens of thousands who will die from depleted uranium, that now that there is weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, and the fact that we have brought it in with the depleted uranium that we've used there and elsewhere, the fact that we've used phosphorus bombs, essentially napalm, in Fallujah and other places. I know much of this is not reported in our media. We have as much censorship as elsewhere, considering the incredibly extensive damage that has been done to our civil rights, and there was with PNAC, the Project the New American Century, it was stated the destruction of states such as Iraq as one of the goals. Considering the incredible damage that has been done, would you still advise this war to have been fought? And I would also like to ask you if you think that it is worth the disintegration and destruction of our country and any others for the sake of protecting Israel.
The decision, as I said in my remarks, the decision that the President made was a tough call. You listed a number of things that I think are correct and a number of things that I don't think are factually correct. But the thrust of what you said is that the war turned out to be much costlier in blood, American blood, Iraqi blood, and that of our coalition partners, and much more expensive and much more prolonged than anybody had hoped for. And that has been terrible, and there have been extremely serious costs involved. The decision that the President had to make, though, when he decided to go to war, was balancing the risks that we would suffer large losses and that things would go not well, against the risks and dangers of leaving Saddam Hussein in power. And there was serious concern that if he had left Saddam Hussein in power and the things we had worried about had materialized, we would have even larger loss of life and more terrible consequences than we've actually seen in Iraq. It's an extremely difficult call for the President to make. And you asked me, do I think he made the right call? I believe under the circumstances he did. Okay, based on what we knew at the time, and I even think based on what we know now, the world is much better off without Saddam Hussein.
Saddam was a bad guy for sure. I
think we should let other people ask their questions.
There was one other. Okay. There was one other terrorist attack on this country, and that was the anthrax attacks that went to Patrick Leahy and Tom Daschle, the senators who were opposing the Patriot Act. We know that anthrax was domestically produced. So once again, we had a domestic attack that was actually internally based.
Well, actually, we don't know that, but
yes, we do. Yes, we do. We do know that.
There's a theory, but anyway, that's different from saying we know it.
Thank you for coming today, Mr. Feith. And I was curious, in your book, do you go back into the early 80s and the video footage we've all seen of Donald Rumsfeld shaking hands with Saddam Hussein and treating him like a person that has, common interests and goals as the United States, and also that many of the weapons that he used on his own people and on the Kurds and against the Iranians were weapons that in part were supplied in part by the United States?
The United States had a policy in the Reagan years during the Iran-Iraq War that included, we had